The massive silver spacecraft hung in Earth's orbit like a twisted metallic cloud. Inside, Princess Lyra of the Star Empire paced in her private chambers, her iridescent skin shifting between shades of blue and purple with each anxious step. Her forearms crossed in various positions of frustration as she read the latest report from the Royal Academy. "Failed again," she muttered, her crystalline eyes scanning the results. This marked her third unsuccessful attempt to pass the leadership trials, a requirement for any member of the royal family who wished to maintain their claim to the throne. At 25 cycles old, roughly equivalent to 20 Earth years, she was running out of chances. The Star Empire's laws were absolute: any heir who failed to prove their worth through the trials would be removed from succession. Already, Lyra could hear the whispers among the court about her younger sister being more suitable for the role. The thought made her stomach churn. A gentle chime interrupted her brooding. "Your Highness," her advisor's voice came through the communication system. "We've detected something unusual about the planet below. The humans appear to have developed a training program that produces extraordinary results in just 100 planetary rotations." Lyra paused her pacing. "Explain." "They call it the 100-day challenge. Their information networks are filled with examples of individuals achieving remarkable transformations in this timeframe. Physical abilities, mental skills, artistic talents, all dramatically improved through focused training." The princess moved to her viewport, gazing down at the blue-green world below. The humans were a curious species. Despite their relatively short lives and limited technological advancement, they had shown remarkable adaptability and determination. Their planet wasn't even part of the Empire yet, this was merely a preliminary survey mission. "Find me one," Lyra commanded suddenly. "Find me a human trainer who has demonstrated exceptional results. I have exactly 100 days until my final attempt at the leadership trials." Her advisor's voice carried clear concern. "Your Highness, direct contact with pre-integration species is strictly forbidden by—" "I'm aware of the laws," Lyra cut him off. "I'm also aware that failing the trials again means losing my birthright. Find a way to make it happen." Quietly. The next 48 hours were a blur of careful planning and secret arrangements. They selected a remote location in a region humans called Montana, plenty of open space and few prying eyes. As for the trainer, they found someone perfect: Jack Cooper, a former military instructor turned wilderness survival expert who had gained modest fame for his ability to transform ordinary people into capable outdoor survivors in just a few months. He lived alone in a cabin near the mountains, ran a small but successful training business, and most importantly, had a reputation for discretion. His clients included wealthy individuals who valued their privacy, making him ideal for their purposes. The actual first contact was anything but smooth. Jack was chopping firewood behind his cabin when the air suddenly shimmered, and a tall, four-armed figure with color-shifting skin appeared before him. To his credit, he didn't run screaming. Instead, he simply lowered his axe slowly and said, "Well, this is new." Lyra had practiced her Earth English extensively during the journey, but still, her accent carried an otherworldly musical quality. "Are you the one called Jack Cooper?" "Depends who's asking," he replied, his grip on the axe handle tightening slightly. "I am Princess Lyra of the Star Empire, and I require your assistance." She straightened to her full height, nearly 7 feet tall, and tried to project royal authority. "I have 100 of your Earth days to prepare for a critical trial. My research indicates you are capable of training individuals to survive challenging situations in this timeframe." Jack leaned his axe against the chopping block and crossed his arms. "You're telling me you came from space, to hire a wilderness survival instructor? Your methods produce results. I need results." Lyra's skin shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of determination in her species. "I am willing to compensate you generously. Name your price." "Lady, if you're really an alien princess, I don't think Earth money means much to you. He studied her for a long moment. But I'm guessing this is pretty important if you're breaking who knows how many space laws to be here. Lyra's lower set of arms clenched. It is, everything. Jack ran a hand through his graying beard. All right. How about this, you tell me the whole story over coffee, and then we'll talk terms. Fair warning though, if this is some elaborate prank, you've got about 10 minutes before I call the authorities. Acceptable, Lyra nodded. Though I must ask, what is coffee? 2 hours later, they sat at Jack's kitchen table, several empty coffee cups between them. Lyra had developed an immediate addiction to the beverage. She had explained everything, the trials, the succession crisis, and why she'd chosen Earth's training methods. So let me get this straight, Jack said, refilling their cups. You need to prove you're worthy to rule an entire space empire, and instead of going to some fancy alien academy, you decided to come to Earth and learn from a guy who teaches rich folks how to start campfires? Your species has something we lack, Lyra explained, wrapping all 4 hands around her warm mug. Adaptability. Creativity. You face limitations we never encounter, yet you find ways to overcome them. The Academy's methods have failed me 3 times. I need a different approach. Jack leaned back in his chair, thinking. The whole situation was absurd, but there was something in the alien princess's eyes, a desperate determination he recognized. He'd seen it in soldiers, in survivors, in people who had one last chance to turn things around. 100 days isn't much time, he said finally. And I'm guessing your trials involve more than just building shelters and tracking animals. They test everything a ruler needs: strategy, decision-making, crisis management, leadership. Lyra's skin rippled with anxiety. Can you help me? Jack stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the mountains he'd called home for the past decade. You know what? Why not? It'll be a hell of a challenge, and that's kind of my specialty. He turned back to her with a slight grin. But we're doing this my way. No royal treatment, no special privileges. You'll work harder than you've ever worked in your life. Lyra stood as well, her tall frame casting a strange shadow in the cabin's light. I accept your terms. All right then, Your Highness. Jack's grin widened. Day 1 starts tomorrow at sunrise. Don't be late, and bring more coffee. Something tells me we're both going to need it. As Lyra prepared to return to her cloaked ship for the night, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. This rough-spoken human with his hot bitter drink and practical wisdom was unlike any instructor she'd ever had. Whether that would be enough to help her pass the trials remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, she was ready to try something new. Even if it meant chopping firewood with her own 4 hands. Dawn broke over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Princess Lyra materialized outside Jack's cabin exactly at sunrise, wearing what she considered appropriate training attire, a sleek, metallic suit that probably cost more than Jack's entire property. Jack took one look at her outfit and shook his head. First lesson, he said, tossing her a bundle of clothes. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Change into these. These turned out to be sturdy work boots, cargo pants, and a flannel shirt modified for her 4 arms. Lyra's skin flickered between shades of indignant purple before settling into a resigned blue. This material is primitive, she observed. It's practical, Jack corrected. Now, before we start, I need to understand what we're working with. Show me how you'd handle a crisis situation. He led her to a clearing where he'd set up a simple scenario: 3 ropes of different lengths, a collection of rocks, and a small stream running through the middle. Pretend those rocks are injured people, he explained. The stream is rising. You have 5 minutes to save them all. Lyra's crystalline eyes narrowed. She'd faced far more complex simulations at the Academy. With practiced efficiency, she began calculating trajectories, measuring distances, and analyzing variables. Her forearms moved in perfect coordination as she worked out an elaborate pulley system with the ropes. 4 minutes later, she had saved exactly 0 rocks. "Stop," Jack called out. "What went wrong?" "Nothing went wrong," Lyra protested, her skin flushing orange with frustration. "I was implementing the standard crisis response protocol. If you'd given me more time, the stream would have risen, and everyone would be dead," Jack cut in. "Watch." He walked into the stream, picked up the rocks, and carried them to safety. It took less than 30 seconds. Lyra stared at him, then at her elaborate rope system. "But, that's not, there are procedures." "That's your first real problem," Jack said, sitting down on one of the rescued rocks. "You're so focused on doing things the right way that you've forgotten to do them the effective way. Leadership isn't about following procedures, it's about getting results." "The Academy isn't here," Jack interrupted again. "For the next 100 days, forget everything they taught you. We're starting from scratch." The next few hours were a blur of similar exercises, each one designed to challenge Lyra's ingrained responses. Jack had her build shelters. Her first attempt involved theoretical quantum physics, start fires. She tried to calculate the optimal molecular reaction, and find north without technology. She gave him a 20-minute lecture on stellar navigation before he handed her a simple compass. By midday, the princess was covered in dirt, her skin a constant swirl of frustrated colors, and she hadn't successfully completed a single task to Jack's satisfaction. "This is impossible," she declared during their lunch break, slumping against a tree with all 4 arms hanging limp. "Your methods make no sense. There's no system, no protocol." "That's because life doesn't follow protocols," Jack replied, handing her a sandwich. "Tell me something, in all your academy training, did they ever teach you to think like the people you're going to rule?" Lyra paused mid-bite. "What do you mean?" "Leadership isn't just about making perfect decisions in controlled situations. It's about understanding the people who depend on you. Their needs, their limitations, their potential." He gestured at the failed exercises around them. "Every time you faced a problem today, you tried to solve it like an Empire princess. Try solving them like someone who just needs to get the job done." "But I am an Empire princess," Lyra said, her voice smaller than usual. "For the next 99 days, you're just Lyra." Jack stood up, brushing off his pants. "Now finish your lunch. This afternoon, we're going to learn how regular people solve problems." The afternoon session was different. Instead of setting up scenarios, Jack had Lyra follow him around as he did his daily tasks. They fixed a leaky roof, without quantum physics, organized his supply shed, without complex algorithmic systems, and helped a neighbor round up escaped chickens, which required more running and less strategic planning than Lyra had done in her entire life. By sunset, the princess was exhausted, filthy, and somehow, exhilarated. "I still don't understand your methods," she admitted as they sat on Jack's porch, watching the day's last light fade. "But I think I'm starting to understand what you mean about effectiveness over procedure." Jack nodded, sipping his coffee. "You know what your biggest advantage is going to be in these trials?" "What?" "The fact that you're willing to learn." He gave her a knowing look. "Most rulers think they already know everything they need to know. But you crossed galaxies to learn from someone your people probably consider primitive. That takes real courage, and humility." Lyra's skin shifted to a soft shade of pink, embarrassment, but also something like pride. "The Academy would say I'm degrading myself." "The Academy has failed you 3 times, Jack reminded her. "Maybe it's time to try being a different kind of leader. One who isn't afraid to get her hands dirty, all 4 of them." That earned him a small laugh, a musical sound he hadn't heard from her before. "Tomorrow's going to be harder," he warned. "We're going to work on decision-making under pressure. Real pressure, not theoretical scenarios. How? Jack's grin had a mischievous edge. Ever been whitewater rafting? Lyra's skin turned a pale, nervous green. I don't know what that is, but I'm certain I won't like it. Probably not, he agreed. But you'll learn from it. That's what matters. As Lyra prepared to return to her ship that night, she looked at her reflection in one of the cabin's windows. The pristine princess from yesterday was gone, replaced by someone with mud on her face, calluses forming on her hands, and a determined set to her shoulders. She barely recognized herself. Maybe that, she realized, was exactly the point. Left. No, your other left. Paddle harder. Lyra's forearms worked in desperate coordination as the raft plunged through another set of rapids. Ice-cold water sprayed her face, and her skin flickered between terrified white and determined blue. 30 days into her training, and Jack had finally made good on his whitewater rafting promise. There's a rock formation ahead, she shouted over the roar of the river. According to my calculations, the optimal route would be. No time for calculations. Jack called back from the rear of the raft. What does your gut tell you? My species has 3 digestive organs, and none of them are telling me anything useful. Stop thinking like a princess. Look at the water. Where's it flowing? Lyra forced herself to focus on the river's movement rather than the complex physics equations running through her mind. The water seemed to curl around the right side of the rocks, creating a clearer channel. Right, she yelled, already steering the raft in that direction. Everyone paddle right. Their small crew, 2 of Jack's experienced rafting friends who'd agreed to help with the training, responded instantly. The raft shot through the gap with inches to spare, emerging into calmer waters beyond. Now that, Jack said with evident satisfaction, was leadership. Later, as they dried off around a campfire, Lyra couldn't stop staring at her hands. All 4 of them were covered in blisters despite the protective gloves she'd worn. A month ago, she would have been horrified. Now she viewed them as badges of honor. You know what I realized today, she said, accepting a mug of hot chocolate, her new favorite earth beverage after coffee. The Academy's trials always gave us time to think. Time to analyze. Time to be perfect. But real life doesn't work that way, Jack nodded, poking the fire with a stick. No, it doesn't. Lyra's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. Real leadership happens in the moments between planning. In the split-second decisions that can't wait for perfect analysis. One of their rafting companions, Tom, chuckled. Took me 3 near-death experiences on this river to learn that lesson. You got it in one trip. Not bad for a space princess. Speaking of space, Jack's other friend Maria chimed in, you never did tell us what these trials of yours actually involve. I mean, if you're allowed to say. Lyra considered for a moment. She'd been authorized to share basic information with the small group of humans helping with her training. There are 3 main challenges, she explained. The first is tactical, solving complex problems under pressure. The second is diplomatic, handling delicate negotiations and cultural conflicts. The third. Her skin darkened slightly, the third is personal. A test of character that's different for each candidate. No one knows what it will be until they face it. And you've failed these 3 times? Maria asked, then quickly added, sorry, that came out wrong. No, you're right to ask. Lyra's lower hands clenched while her upper ones cradled the hot chocolate. I always passed the tactical trials. My academy training was perfect for those. The diplomatic sections were harder, but I managed. It was the character trials that. She trailed off. That's why you're really here, isn't it? Jack said quietly. The academy could teach you strategy and diplomacy. But character, that has to be earned. Lyra nodded slowly. The first time I failed, I was angry. The second time, I was desperate. The third time. Her skin rippled with remembered shame. I realized I didn't just need different training. I needed to become a different person. And have you? Tom asked. Instead of answering immediately, Lyra held out her hands to the fire, examining the blisters and calluses in the flickering light. A month ago, I wouldn't have touched an oar. I wouldn't have sat on the ground. I wouldn't have admitted to failing anything. She smiled slightly. I wouldn't have known that marshmallows could burn so spectacularly. That got a laugh from everyone, remembering her first disastrous attempt at Amaze the previous week. But it's more than that, she continued. Today on the river, when we helped that other raft that got stuck, I didn't think about protocols or procedures. I just helped. Because they needed it. Because it was right. Her skin glowed with a warm golden color they'd never seen before. I think maybe that's what leadership really is. Jack watched her thoughtfully. You've got 69 days left. What do you want to do with them? Everything, Lyra said without hesitation. Teach me everything. Not just survival skills, I want to understand how humans live. How they work together. How they build communities without perfect protocols and advanced technology. She gestured at the small group around the fire. How they become friends despite their differences. Careful what you wish for, Maria grinned. I run a community center in town. Lots of opportunities for character building there. My daughter's Girl Scout troop could use another leader, Tom added. Nothing tests leadership like handling 12 energetic kids in the wilderness. Jack leaned back, a satisfied smile on his face. See what's happening here, Lyra? Real leaders don't just find teachers, they find people who believe in them. People who want to help them succeed. Lyra looked around the fire at these humans who had accepted her so readily, who were offering to help her without any promise of reward. Her academy instructors would be horrified at how far she'd strayed from their carefully structured program. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she was on the right path. Tomorrow's supposed to be a rest day, Jack said, but if you're serious about this. No rest, Lyra interrupted. Not when there's so much to learn. She turned to Maria. What time does your community center open? 6 a.m. We serve breakfast to local kids before school. I'll be there at 5 to help set up. All four of her hands made emphatic gestures. And Tom, when does your daughter's troop meet? Thursday afternoons. You sure you want to tackle that? Preteens can be pretty intimidating. Lyra's skin shifted to the same determined blue they'd seen on the river. I've faced 3 failed trials and today's rapids. I think I can handle some young humans. As the group continued planning, none of them noticed Jack quietly observing. He saw how naturally Lyra had taken charge of the conversation, how she was already thinking about helping others rather than just her own training. Most importantly, he saw how her royal posture had relaxed, how her formal speech patterns had softened, how she was simply present in the moment. The academy had tried to make her a perfect leader. But here, around a campfire on Earth, she was becoming a real one. Day 65 of training began like many others, with chaos at Maria's community center. Miss Lyra. The stove's acting up again, called one of the teenage volunteers. Tommy and Sarah are fighting over the last apple, shouted another. The delivery truck's here early, and they need someone to sign. Lyra, her skin cycling through a rainbow of colors as she managed multiple tasks, didn't miss a beat. Her lower arms continued stirring 2 pots of oatmeal while her upper arms grabbed the clipboard and inspection checklist she'd developed. Jake, check the pilot light on the stove, remember the technique I showed you, she called out. Amy, tell Tommy and Sarah to split the apple, there's a knife in the second drawer. I'll handle the delivery. Jack watched from the doorway, sipping his morning coffee. In just over a month, the community center's breakfast program had transformed. What was once a well-meaning but disorganized effort now ran like a precision instrument, but with heart. "You're hovering again," Lyra said as she passed him, delivery clipboard in hand. "Just observing," he replied. "You've got your final trial in 35 days. Thought you might want some feedback." Lyra paused, her skin shifting to an interested shade of violet. "And?" "The Lyra I met 2 months ago would have created a 40-page procedure manual for running this kitchen." He gestured at the organized chaos around them. "Instead, you've taught these kids to think for themselves while working as a team. That's real leadership." Before Lyra could respond, a crash came from the main room, followed by the distinct sound of preteen drama. "Girl Scouts," she muttered. "They're early for their meeting. We'll talk later." The scene in the main room was classic middle school chaos. A dropped craft project had scattered glitter across the floor, threatening to start what Lyra had learned humans called a glitter apocalypse. 2 girls were on the verge of tears, 3 were arguing over who was at fault, and the rest were trying to help but mainly making things worse. "Everyone freeze." Lyra's voice carried the authority of generations of royal training, tempered now with genuine care. The room went still. "Excellent. Now, who can tell me what our troop motto is?" "We solve problems together," the girls chorused. "Perfect. Sophie, get the special vacuum for glitter. Madison and Lily, help her. Emma, you're good at organizing, get the craft supplies sorted. Everyone else, clear the tables so we can set up properly." She looked at the 2 almost crying girls. "And you 2 are coming with me." In her first week as assistant troop leader, Lyra would have lectured them about responsibility and proper behavior. Now, she took them to the kitchen, got them hot chocolate, and listened as they talked about the friendship drama that had really caused the accident. By the time the meeting officially started, the crisis was resolved, the room was glitter-free, mostly, and the girls were excitedly working on their community service badges. "You know," Tom said, watching his daughter enthusiastically plan a neighborhood cleanup project, "when you first showed up, I thought having an alien princess help lead the troop was crazy. Now I can't imagine it without you." Lyra's skin turned a pleased pink. "They've taught me more than I've taught them." "Oh? How so?" She gestured at the girls working together. "Look at them. They make mistakes. They argue. They fail. But they're not afraid of any of it. They pick themselves up and try again." Her color deepened. "I spent my whole life terrified of failure. These young humans embrace it as part of learning." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activities. Evening found Lyra and Jack on their usual spot on his porch, but this time they had company. Maria and Tom had joined them, along with several other townspeople who'd become part of Lyra's expanding Earth family. "I got a message from the academy today," Lyra announced during a lull in conversation. Everyone went quiet. "They've set the date for my final trial. It's..." Her skin paled slightly. "It's in 34 days. Are you ready?" Maria asked. "No," Lyra admitted, then smiled. "But I'm not supposed to be, am I? That's what these past months have taught me. It's not about being ready for everything. It's about being ready to handle anything." "Speaking of handling things," Jack interjected, "there's something we need to discuss." He pulled out a newspaper and handed it to Lyra. "Someone took a photo of you at last week's town fair. It's a bit blurry, but..." Lyra's heart sank as she looked at the grainy image. While her appearance could be explained away to the small group who knew her, a newspaper photo was different. The Empire has strict rules about pre-integration contact. If they see this. "Already handled," Maria said with a grin. My kids at the center started a social media campaign claiming it was publicity for an upcoming sci-fi movie being filmed in town. Everyone loved it. The newspaper's running a retraction tomorrow. You all did that for me?" Lyra's skin swirled with emotion. "Of course we did," Tom said. "You're one of us now. Weird alien arms and color-changing skin included." Jack cleared his throat. "Which brings us to the next part of your training. These last 34 days, they're going to be different." "Different how?" "You've learned to handle chaos in the kitchen, drama with the scouts, crisis on the river. But your trials will test more than that." He leaned forward. "They'll test who you are when everything falls apart. When you have to choose between what's right and what's expected. Like that choice you just made," Maria added. "Between reporting the photo incident to your empire and trusting us to handle it our way." Lyra's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You planned this? The photo? The crisis?" "Nope," Jack grinned. "That's the beauty of it. Real life gave you exactly the test you needed, exactly when you needed it. And you passed by following your heart instead of your protocols. But for these last days," he continued, "we're going to orchestrate some challenges. Things that will push you to your limits. Things that will force you to choose between your old way of thinking and your new understanding. And we're all going to help," Tom added. "The whole town, in fact. Consider it one big final exam prep." Lyra looked around at these humans who had become her teachers, her friends, her support system. 2 months ago, she would have been horrified at the idea of surrendering control of her training. Now. "When do we start?" she asked, her skin shifting to that determined blue they'd all come to recognize. "Tomorrow," Jack said. "And Lyra?" "No protocols, no manuals, and definitely no quantum physics. Just one question," she replied, her expression serious but her skin flickering with amusement. "Will there be coffee?" The laughter that followed echoed into the Montana night, carrying with it the promise of challenges to come and the confidence of a leader who was finally learning to trust not just herself, but others as well. The 100th day dawned clear and cold over Montana. Lyra stood in front of Jack's cabin one last time, her skin shifting between nervous green and determined blue. The past month had been exactly as challenging as Jack promised, with the entire town conspiring to test her in unexpected ways. They'd simulated power outages during community center breakfast rushes. Created artificial emergencies during Girl Scout camping trips. Even staged a mock town council meeting where she had to mediate between opposing groups. Each challenge had pushed her to blend her royal training with her new Earth-learned wisdom. "Ready?" Jack asked, joining her on the porch. "No," Lyra admitted, then smiled. "But that's okay. Being ready isn't the point, is it? Now you're getting it." He handed her a travel mug of coffee, her last Earth breakfast. "Any idea what you'll face up there?" Lyra shook her head. "The final trial is different for every candidate. It's supposed to test our deepest weaknesses." She took a sip of coffee, savoring it. "Though I think I finally understand what mine is." "Oh? I was always afraid of being imperfect. Of making mistakes. Of letting people see me fail." Her skin settled into a calm purple. "But real leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being genuine." The sound of approaching footsteps made them turn. Maria, Tom, and what seemed like half the town were walking up the path to Jack's cabin. "Didn't think we'd let you leave without saying goodbye, did you?" Maria called out. Lyra's eyes welled with tears, something she'd learned from humans. "I can't believe you all came." "Of course we did," Tom said. "Our alien princess is going to ace her space test. Wouldn't miss this send-off for anything." One by one, they came forward to say goodbye. The Girl Scouts presented her with a handmade sash covered in unofficial badges: Master of Chaos, glitter survivor, four-armed chef, and dozens more. The community center kids gave her a photo album filled with memories of their time together. "Remember," one of the younger girls said seriously, "when you're ruling your empire, sometimes you just need to split the apple." Lyra laughed, remembering that early lesson in simple solutions. "I'll remember." Finally, it was time. Her ship's cloaking device shimmered as it appeared above them. "Jack," she turned to her mentor, "I don't know how to thank you." "Just pass those trials," he said gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. "And maybe come visit sometimes. Bring coffee from space." The beam of light appeared, ready to transport her up. Lyra took one last look at the gathered humans, her Earth family. Then she stepped into the light. The trials began immediately upon her return to the Empire's testing facility. The tactical challenge came first, a complex scenario involving resource allocation during a cosmic storm. Instead of getting lost in calculations, Lyra approached it like organizing the community center kitchen, prioritizing needs, delegating tasks, and adapting to changing conditions. She passed with the highest score ever recorded. The diplomatic trial followed, mediating a dispute between two species with seemingly irreconcilable differences. Lyra thought of her Girl Scouts, of how they solved conflicts through understanding and compromise. She got both parties to focus on their shared goals rather than their differences. Another record-breaking score. Then came the final trial. The personal one. Lyra found herself in a simulation of the Empire's throne room. Before her stood two versions of herself, one in pristine royal attire, looking exactly as she had before Earth, the other in her modified flannel shirt and cargo pants, still muddy from her last hike with Jack. "Choose," a voice commanded. "Choose who you will be as ruler." Lyra looked between her two selves, understanding dawning. This was never about choosing between being a princess or being ordinary. It was about something much deeper. "No," she said firmly. "You must choose," the voice insisted. "I choose both," Lyra declared, her skin glowing with confidence. A ruler needs the wisdom of the stars and the wisdom of the soil. The ability to see from above and to walk among their people. To know both protocol and passion, tradition and transformation. She stepped between her two selves, merging them. "I choose to be whole. To lead not from a distant throne, but from a place of understanding. To be both the princess who knows the weight of her duty and the person who knows the warmth of community." The simulation shimmered and faded. In its place stood the Academy's High Council, watching her with unreadable expressions. "Interesting," the head counselor said finally. "In all our years of testing, no one has ever refused to choose. They either cling to tradition or reject it entirely. You are the first to understand that true leadership requires balance." "I had good teachers," Lyra replied, thinking of Jack's practical wisdom and her Earth family's countless lessons. "Your methods were unconventional," another counselor noted. "Seeking training from a pre-integration species. Who taught me more about leadership than 1,000 Academy protocols," Lyra interrupted, her four hands clasped firmly. "They showed me that a leader's strength isn't in their perfection, but in their humanity, or in my case, their ability to understand humanity." The council chambers fell silent. Then, slowly, the head counselor smiled. "Princess Lyra," she announced, "you have passed the trials. Not despite your unconventional training, but because of it. The Empire needs leaders who can bridge worlds, who understand both the grand cosmic scale of our civilization and the simple truths of connection." The ceremony that followed was a blur of formal protocols and ancient traditions. But as Lyra accepted her confirmation as heir, her skin glowing with joy, she knew her first act would be to change those protocols. To open the Empire to new ways of learning, new ways of leading. And perhaps, she thought with a smile, to establish an exchange program with a certain small town in Montana. 3 months later, Jack Cooper opened his cabin door to find a strange package on his porch. Inside was an otherworldly coffee maker, a bag of beans from a planet he couldn't pronounce, and a note. "Dear Jack, and everyone. The Empire's diplomatic corps was horrified when I suggested making Earth coffee our official state beverage. I did it anyway. Consider this the first step in a beautiful diplomatic relationship. P.S. The Girl Scouts camping trip is in 2 weeks. I've arranged for some diplomatic observations in the area. Save me some esmores. With love from the stars, and 4-armed hugs. Lyra. P.P.S. I still haven't used quantum physics once. You'd be proud." Jack laughed, shaking his head as he headed inside to try out his new coffee maker. Somewhere up there, an alien princess was changing an empire, one simple solution at a time. Sometimes the best leaders aren't the ones who reach for the stars, but the ones who remember to keep their feet on the ground, even if they have 4 arms and color-changing skin.